Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Long Boys Blues, 1975. A YouTuber's on the rise. Reviewing games, and sometimes friends. But Long Boys Blues, 1975.
Hey YouTube, Lawn Boys Post 1975. There's an S on Lawn Boys, isn't there? I just realised that. Lawn Boys Post 1975, and welcome to a random vlog. And this is a little bit random, but then these vlogs are now called the Random Vlog. I want to talk about obsolete media, and in my case, I want to specifically talk about UMD, and by that I mean movies on the PlayStation Portable, the PSP. I love my PSP. It's funny, right? Because, and the reason I want to talk about this is I was out shopping with a mate last week, and this is the only reason I go in CEX. Can't stand CEX, they're too expensive. Everyone who works there is either a goth. It's like a clone of 4 people that they just basically clone at head office and pump out to every CEX. You got a goth, you got a hipster, you got an emo guy, and you have one regular person, but you're only allowed one regular person per store, and they always play really, really shit music. You know that none of them actually enjoy, because they're playing it to try and make a statement to the people who shop there, rather than play shit that they like. Anyway, yeah, not a massive fan of them. Overpriced. Stupid things like printing covers and stuff like that that they never even admitted until they got caught with their pants down. But one thing I do always get there in the end, go in there for, is to see their selection of PSP games, and particularly movies, because they're really, really cheap, and I like old school media. And my mate, who never been shopping with me in a CX before, was genuinely quite surprised that I was buying UMD movies, you know. Universal Media Device, is it? It was Sony's own proprietary media that they invented for the PSP, but I'm pretty sure you all know that. It was 1.8 gigabytes per disc, so under half the size of a DVD, and it was comparable to DVD quality movie format, wasn't it? Because I believe it was 480p. What was it like if you upscaled it, or you plugged it into a TV, I should say? Don't know, because I've got a PSP 1000 and you can't connect it to a TV, although it does have the ports, or some ports on it, but I've never been able to find a lead that can actually fit in it. So maybe that's just my experience. By all means, help me out and let me know down below. But anyway, yeah, so why are you buying now? Why don't you just download it? It's free. And my first answer to that was, I can afford the massive hit on my wallet of 50p a movie, because they're basically 50p a movie. No one wants them, but there's always a decent selection, and there was so many of them released on the PSP, like loads of TV shows, loads of movies, including box sets. There were box sets. I know Harry Potter's a box set on there. Prison Break, I'm pretty sure, is a box set on there. The only movie that you sadly can't get on it, because it's to do with studios, and I believe it almost tanked immediately in America, North America, so studios started dropping out as little as a year to 18 months later. But Back to the Future is not on it. I would kill for a Back to the Future, you know, UMD for my PlayStation Portable, even if it's, well, it would have to be someone knocked up a special bootleg. You know, when they make the effort themselves, how you would code a disc, I don't know. But the point is, they were genuinely shocked. The only thing I want to say about that is, you know, and I know it's not entirely the same, but I do kind of want to make this point, which is when everyone always goes on about, like, you know, you must support hard physical media because you'll regret it when it's gone. But when it comes to you using old school media, the first thing anyone ever says is, why do you still watch that? Just download it. It's so much better quality. It's free. No, because I genuinely enjoy the act of watching a movie on a PSP. Do I watch all my movies on PSP? Obviously, I do not. Probably once a week, you know, sat on my bed late at night, all the lights off, headphones in, with it in my lap. I don't know why, I enjoy it, but we'll get a little bit more to why I enjoy the process a bit later on, because I remember I still lived in Canada when the PSP was announced, and it was like basically PlayStation 2-ish power in a handheld, which was absolutely unheard of then. I mean, since then, handheld, you know, and obviously then you've got the 2-in-1 handheld, the Switch and shit like that, but handhelds have gone through the roof in power. Not so much back then. Basically, riding off the coattails of Game Boy Advance, was it? I don't know. That's why I'm raising my voice, because it's a question. When did the DS come out? But the DS couldn't do... Well, it did kind of do movies, but they were pixelated as shit, weren't they? Also, they did kind of do movies on the Game Boy Advance, didn't they? But I digress. So the PSP was an absolutely massive deal, and some guy in my office, who was a developer and had a little bit of cash, had one, and he brought it to the bar one night, and like he was playing Ridge Racer on it, and we were just blown away. This thing looked absolutely phenomenal, and he lent it to me for a couple of days, and then I just took it because he was off from work, and then I took it back when he came back to work, and like, but he didn't have any movies, and the thing is that we knew that there were movies, and they announced, because it was in like, you know, all the internet sites and shit like that at the time, and they announced that this is what they literally do, don't they? This thing can play movies. Now, you got to remember, this is 2005, and smartphones weren't a thing. I mean, the must-have phone, I'm pretty sure in 2005, that everyone lost their shit over, including me when I saw my mates with it, was the original Motorola Razr. Seriously, that was the phone to have. Remember how the dust used to come in through the two holes at the top on the screen and just fucking ruin it? Anyway, so obviously, I mean, iPads were around, not iPod Touch or anything like that. iPods, not iPod Touch, or, you know. But I don't know how movies worked on them and stuff. And there was a guy who had a media player, but it had a computer hard drive in it, and it was like the file size for the stuff on it was absolutely huge, but it was, you know, hard drive and stuff like that. There wasn't anything where you could, like, you know, game-wise, the movies came on the same formats as the games, and obviously I'm assuming it's to do with the price of, you know, storage, you know, and SD card storage and shit like that, why Sony went with their own. Let's have, oh, there's one in the back of here. I love this noise, listen. Their own, you know, proprietary format to keep the cost down. So, you know, I think 1.8 gig in 2005, you know, is pretty decent. Don't you? But yeah, so obviously I don't know how big the games were getting on DS and stuff like that. I mean, I know how big they were on Game Boy Advance, and you know, they're absolutely tiny, but they wanted to take advantage of this power, so they needed a bigger storage format, and that's why they went with this, and obviously that would allow them to put movies on it, and I guess they wanted that kind of gimmick, that thing to differentiate them from the other handhelds. Look, take us a little bit more seriously, because you can play movies on us, and look at all these movies, you know, and they, you know, and all these studios who've signed up for it and stuff like that. And so this is prior to Blu-ray, isn't it? So they invented a media format for movies. I know it was for games as well, because it's essentially stories, but in movie format before Blu-ray, or I could be wrong on that, so by all means correct me. But, and that's what they advertised it as. And I remember that it was a huge deal, because we didn't have phones that we could load with movies back then. And I am aware that you could load this up with, if you bought a decent enough card or an adapter, because Sony made proprietary memory cards for this that were incredibly expensive. This is hacked, by the way. I friggin' love my PSP, absolutely love and adore it. It's a machine I didn't have upon launch. I got mine originally in 2008, but it's a machine I can't live without. So much so that I did a vlog called that. You know, machines I didn't have at launch but couldn't live without now. PSP. But the point is, yeah, so, you know, it was, yeah, sorry, you could obviously put movies on this and stuff, and I used to download stuff, you know, for like a YouTube ripper and shit like that, and fill it up and stuff like that, so I could watch it on my original one in 2008. But couldn't really do that in 2005, could you? And well, probably could. So the fact that you had movies on it, you know, and a lot, I mean, there were a lot, it was kind of a big deal at the time. It really did make it separate from, you know, and stand out from all the other handhelds. Also, so did the price, because it was friggin' expensive, but it was, you know, shit hot tech back then, so, you know, did they sell it at a loss? I don't know. But moving on, right, so obviously people still watch VHS. I own a VHS. I own a Betamax as well. Yeah, true story. Why do I own a Betamax if I own a VHS? Because the Betamax is still the best system. I'm still going there. And if you go on Facebook and stuff, and obviously like YouTube channels and that, there are people, there's still a market for people who, you know, collect VHS tapes and stuff like that. I have, similar to this, a bunch of my favourite movies on VHS. And I'm lucky enough to have a VHS that's like 6 head and it's super whammy and stuff like that, and can play NTSC. So I have, like, you know, a couple of versions of Back to the Future, UK one, US one. Funny because I probably should have done a pickup video because it's Back to the Future, but my brain just thinks, who's going to give a shit about VHS tapes? But I'm sure there are people out there. But yeah, and I'd love a Laserdisc, but they're so cheap in North America, but they just get butchered getting sent over here. Because I know people who've actually offered to send me one. I'm like, no, mate, it'll just die. But in this country, they're ridiculously expensive. But you could argue, even though that's an obsolete format, that's still absolutely kick-ass. Point is, people still like these old formats. So when people say, like, why are you still flogging that dead horse? Do this, do that. Yes, it's probably a massive dose of nostalgia in stuff like that. But there's still something very attractive about moving parts, isn't there? And the simplicity of the mechanics and the engineering and stuff like this, and takes you back to your child and stuff like that. I get that. There's a whole retro nostalgia kick in things. And you could argue that the PSP is kind of like a mini DVD and a little bit more separate from that. But I don't know what it is about watching movies on this that I just like so much. And obviously they're so cheap, but I only buy ones that are like my favorite movies, because I don't want to get like an expansive collection for it. It's literally, it is a nostalgia thing. It's a treat, and it's got to be movies that I really, really highly rank and love. Not just from my childhood, but from recent years and stuff like that. And the fact that they're so cheap now, because essentially as a format it tanked, is just bread and butter. So when my mate was like, "Why are you still buying this?" Because it's cool. Basically, maybe it's a retro gaming thing, because it's cool. So, I mean, like I said, it's the moving part thing. Obviously, this was dumbed down, simplified, because too many moving parts means stuff breaks really easily. Although, this is 18 years and it's still hanging in there. Is this a retro system when it's 18 years old? It is to me. But, yeah, so, like, the fact that you can hear it, the fact that you can feel vibration and stuff like that, it's just pleasing, it's just nice. It's kind of old school but future tech, if you know what I mean. And I do think it's kind of cool that Sony had to invent their own storage device for this, and that they added the movie, functionality, because it's a big, fat, nice screen on this. 4.3, I believe, not sure, but it's a really nice screen. And people always say, but you should replace it with something more modern, because the old screens are crap. I don't know. I still, still think it's pretty decent quality. I don't have any problems watching it. Battery life on this isn't great, but yeah. So the fact that people seem to turn their nose up at me for watching, or one specific person. Actually, I talked to a few people at work, and one person even said, "What's a PSP?" That made me feel old. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, I find it funny that I still go out of my way to watch media on this. Am I the only person? I'm pretty sure I can't. And if you like put movies on the card and shit like that and watch movies, I don't really care about that. I want to know if people still, just for, well, oddity, shits and giggles, curiosity, or nostalgia on a machine that's only 18 years old, still buy UMDs. Because like I said, the price point is fantastic. And the other thing I want to say about UMDs that is great is it's that I've got media in my hands thing. Do you know what I mean? And you have to open it up and you have to take it out. So obviously, I saw the Goonies. I had to have the Goonies. Had to have Batman. Watched this very recently. Watched The Flash, which is not as bad as everyone says. The CG is awful though. The CG is absolutely awful, and you have to pretend that it's not Ezra Miller, because if you start to think about it being Ezra Miller, it just annoys you. But I watched this again because Michael Keaton's bits in that are absolutely fantastic, and not just the Batman bits, the Bruce Wayne bits. So, yeah, I watched it after that. All of these cost 50p. The fact that Akira is on the PSP, that's like when you know that you've nailed your movies, you've done it properly. And obviously, the original Matrix, because that's one of my favourite movies. See? This was cash converters. 50p. I mean, holy cow, you're right. I should save that 50p and download it. But, yeah, so obsolete old school media. I mean, I guess I could ask, do not just the PSP. The primarily for you, though, is does anyone else watch, and enjoy the process of watching a movie on the PSP? Because like I said, I do. The fact that you have to pop it open and you have to pop in an actual disc. I understand that that's just as much for games, but the fact that it's a movie player as well and it's a disc really does make it feel as much. Because most people just bought it for games, but to me, it could just be a portable movie player. I mean, it was a few years ahead of its time. Maybe they could have just made a portable movie player and UMDs would have taken off. From what I understand, I don't know how expensive they were initially in Canada, but weren't they like 15 quid over here. I remember when I first came back, supermarkets had a very small section of them. I want to say $14.99, which is hell of expensive for what it is, because basically, while it's DVD quality comparably, you ain't getting special features on it. Occasionally you did, if the movie was really small, but you're not, because it's 1.8 gig. So that's expensive for it, isn't it? Although you could argue VHS was expensive as well. Although, was that still knocking around in 2006? Probably not. But I think companies started pulling out of it like a year to 18 months after the launch of it, because there just were no sales for it. People just generally didn't care, and they essentially just ended up in, as they are now, bargain bins forever. I think it had a little bit more longevity in Europe, not sure why, maybe because we're a little bit more prehistoric and stuff like that. And I know it did seem to do very well in Japan, and I do know in Japan that apparently there was Nog on it. Yeah, that's awkward, isn't it? Nog on a PSP, although people have got it on their phones, so you could argue what's the difference. So yeah, a bit of a random vlog, but you know, wanted to talk about it because this is still relevant to me, just not because it's hacked and it's loaded with emulates and stuff like that, while I put a massive amount of fingerprints all over it. But it's still relevant for as a viable movie format for me. Again, there might be nostalgia and shit in there, but I still watch it and gain enjoyment out of it. And I wondered if that was the same for anyone else. And that goes for any obsolete media format, but particularly UMD on the PSP. That rhymed. Anyway, as always, I love to know what you think. Thank you. It got away from me, I am aware. Thank you very much for watching. I am wearing the best t-shirt in the world ever. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.